My name is Hannah Dawson. I'm 33 years old now, and I still remember the exact moment I realized my family never really counted me as one of their own. It wasn't during a fight or a screaming match. It was the smell. Grilled ribs mixed with gasoline, sweet smoke, sharp fumes, backyard summer pretending to be warmth. That was the day it finally clicked. I wasn't the disappointment because I failed. I was the disappointment because I succeeded in the wrong direction. If you'd told me 10 years ago that I'd own 3 properties, run a profitable landscaping company, and employ 20 full-time workers, I would have laughed. Not because I lacked ambition. I had plenty. But growing up, ambition only counted in my house if it came with a suit, a degree, and my father's approval. My younger brother Brandon had all 3. Brandon was the golden child in ways that weren't subtle or accidental. Every framed photo in the house showed him holding a trophy. Every birthday meant a custom cake, balloons, and guests. When he got a brand new BMW at 17 for maintaining a B-plus average, my parents called it an investment in potential. When I graduated high school, I got a handshake and one question from my father. So what now? Not congratulations, not pride, just an expiration notice. I wasn't stupid. I just didn't fit the narrative they wanted to brag about. I liked building things with my hands, fixing engines, cutting grass, turning broken machines into something that worked again. In my family, that translated to less than. So I left at 19. I took a job working for an older man named Reggie who ran a small landscaping business. Gruff, chain smoker. No patience for excuses. He taught me everything: how to bid jobs, how to read soil, how to handle difficult clients without breaking your own spine in the process. I saved every dollar, ate cheap, worked weekends. No one in my family noticed. They only called when Brandon needed help moving something heavy, or when Dad's sprinkler system broke. You're good with tools, right? By 24, I bought my first fixer-upper. I renovated it myself, sold it, rolled the profit into a duplex, rented one side, lived in the other. I didn't post about it, didn't bring it up at Thanksgiving. I learned early that success makes people uncomfortable when they don't understand it. In my family, I wasn't successful. I was blue-collar, as in at least she's not in jail. Meanwhile, Brandon went Ivy League, then Stanford grad school, then joined a startup that burned through millions while calling it disruptive. When Dad handed him a business card and said, "One day, this will all be yours," I smiled and nodded, like I always did. I was used to it. Then came the June barbecue. My parents threw it every year. Caterers, tents, guests who barely knew us, but loved to attend anything with a charcuterie table. I'd skipped the last 2 claiming work conflicts. This year, my grandfather guilted me into going. He's my mom's father, old school, honest, the only person who ever said he was proud of me. "If you don't show up," he said, "I'll come over and tell you golf stories for 6 hours straight." That man once spent 15 minutes describing a sand trap. So I went. I parked down the street, walked in with a 6-pack of craft beer. Nobody noticed. Brandon's BMW sat on the lawn like a shrine. Music blared. Conversations orbited him. I found Grandpa by the grill. He hugged me, squinted at my arms. "You been lifting bricks or just showing off?" "Bit of both." We talked work. I mentioned a possible commercial contract downtown. His eyebrows rose. "That's no small job," he said quietly. "Proud of you." That was the last nice thing anyone said to me that day. Later, one of my younger cousins asked about my trucks parked near Maple Avenue. I answered honestly, said I'd closed on my 3rd property. I didn't know Brandon was standing behind me. "You own 3 properties," he said loudly. "Since when?" The air shifted. "Couple years," I said calmly. He laughed. "You, Hannah, the lawn girl." Someone chuckled. I smiled tightly. I just decided to build my own clock. He didn't like that. He mocked. He belittled. He accused me of acting superior. Then he threw his drink into the grass hard enough to shatter glass. Mom cried. A kid screamed. The party froze. And then my grandfather laughed. A dry wheezing sound that cut through everything. He leaned on his cane and said slowly, "If Hannah's the disappointment, then what does that make you?" Silence. The kind that changes rooms forever. Brandon stormed off. Mom chased him. Dad said nothing. I stayed another hour. Talked about tomatoes. Grandpa handed me a napkin with a name and number. "Tell him I sent you." That night, Brandon posted something vague online about snakes and flannel. I ignored it. I didn't know yet that silence was about to cost me everything. If there's one thing I've learned about people like my brother, it's this: silence doesn't calm them. It provokes them. After the barbecue, I did what I always did. I went quiet. I went back to work. I didn't respond to Brandon's vague Instagram jab. I didn't call my parents to explain myself. I didn't even talk it over with my boyfriend Daniel beyond a passing family stuff blew up again. Daniel knew better than to push. He'd seen how carefully I'd built my emotional walls. He also knew that when I retreated into work, it wasn't avoidance, it was survival. For about 2 weeks, nothing happened. No calls, no texts, no drama. I almost believed that Grandpa's words had ended it, that Brandon had finally been shamed into backing off, that the moment had landed where it needed to land. That was my mistake. The call came on a Wednesday morning while I was reviewing invoices in my office trailer. An unfamiliar number popped up. Normally I wouldn't answer, but I was waiting on a contractor callback. "This is Hannah Dawson," I said. "Ms. Dawson, this is Sandra from Glendew Bank. I'm calling to confirm a few details regarding your small business line of credit application." My stomach dropped. "I didn't apply for a line of credit," I said slowly. There was a pause on the other end, the kind that tells you something has already gone wrong. "Oh," she said. "Are you not affiliated with Dawson Landscaping, LLC?" "That's my company," I replied, "but I haven't submitted any applications." She sounded genuinely concerned now. Told me the application had my full name, home address, EIN business registration, everything accurate. It had been submitted online, electronically signed. I felt cold. "I think this is fraud," I said. She agreed and flagged it immediately, escalating it to compliance. The call ended politely, professionally, but my hands were shaking. My AN wasn't public. My home address wasn't listed anywhere associated with the company. Even my employees didn't know where I lived. I was meticulous about that, always had been. I called my accountant. We checked every filing. Nothing else out of place. No tax discrepancies. No phantom accounts. Just that one application. And then it hit me. The barbecue. I'd left my work phone on the patio table when I went to grab food. 10 minutes, maybe less. It had a simple passcode one I'd never bothered to change because I didn't think anyone in my family would ever cross that line. Brandon knew it. He'd teased me about it years ago. Said I was predictable. I'd laughed it off. I didn't laugh now. I couldn't prove anything. Not yet. And confronting him without proof would only give him what he wanted, reaction chaos, a chance to play victim. So I stayed quiet again. I told myself it was a one-off, a petty scare tactic. Something to rattle me, make me doubt myself. I was wrong. That fall, I applied for a large university landscaping contract, 2 dorm buildings, and the central quad. It was the biggest bid I'd ever prepared. Weeks of estimates, references, site walks, late nights triple-checking numbers. I felt good about it, nervous but confident. A week before the decision, I got another call. Hannah, the project coordinator, said, voice careful, "I wanted to give you a heads up. We've received a few complaints about your company." My chest tightened. Complaints, online reviews, emails, a Better Business Bureau entry. None of it was true. The reviews were recent, anonymous, poorly written, but specific enough to sting. One referenced damage at a property I'd never worked on. The BBB complaint listed my AN again. I spent 3 days submitting takedown requests, sending client references, explaining. I lost the contract anyway. They went with a bigger firm. That one hurt more than I expected. I didn't tell my parents. Didn't tell Grandpa. I didn't even tell Daniel, not fully. I just worked longer hours, slept less, built thicker walls. But something had shifted. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This was war. And my brother wasn't trying to beat me. He was trying to erase me. Losing the university contract didn't bankrupt me, but it did something worse. It made me doubt myself. For weeks after every email notification made my stomach twist. Every delay from a client felt loaded. I started rereading messages for hidden accusations, checking reviews, compulsively bracing for the next hit. That's the real damage sabotage does. It doesn't just cost you money. It makes you question your own footing. I threw myself into work anyway. That was always my instinct, outwork the problem until it got tired of chasing me. But Brandon wasn't chasing anymore. He was circling. The fake reviews kept coming. A handful at first, then more. Different platforms. Same tone. Same kind of vague specificity. Unreliable. Damaged property. Unprofessional crews. None of it matched any client I'd ever had. I hired a consultant to help me scrub them. She confirmed what I already suspected. "These are coordinated," she said. "Same IP clusters, same device patterns. Someone's doing this deliberately." I didn't ask who she thought it was. Then came the city complaint. I got the call in February pulling into the gravel lot of my newest commercial property on Maple Avenue. Still fenced, still under early development, but mine. "Ms. Dawson, This is Officer Keller with Business Compliance. We've received an anonymous report regarding zoning irregularities and safety violations at your site. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Are you available to come down to City Hall today? I went. I sat in a sterile office while a woman flipped through a clipboard of vague accusations. Unsafe storage, improper permits, equipment placement. I handed her everything. Permits, zoning approvals, safety reports, highlighted, organized, boring. By the end, her posture softened. This looks clean, she said. We'll likely close the complaint. But the damage had already started. A contractor pulled out the next day. Insurance concerns. Just until the city clears it, he said. That delay spooked a bakery tenant. Their lawyer requested amendments. A chiropractor wanted a walkthrough. A design firm ghosted me completely. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. I barely slept that week. Walked through Home Depot one evening and nearly buckled in the plumbing aisle. Caught myself on a shelf and stood there breathing like I'd run a mile. It wasn't the money. It was knowing this was coming from inside my family. I'd spent years shrinking myself to keep the peace. Staying quiet, not bragging, not defending. And every time I thought I was being mature, I was really just making myself easier to step on. I almost called Grandpa that night. Dialed his number, hung up. The next morning he showed up anyway. Rusted Ford. 2 coffees. Same crooked smile. I figured you might be too proud to call, he said. I told him everything. He listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't defend Brandon. Just nodded. Your grandmother used to say he told me there's a special kind of fool who mistakes silence for weakness. I didn't answer. Stop playing chess with a pigeon, he added. It'll knock over the pieces and crap on the board. I laughed despite myself. And for the first time, I stopped reacting. I started documenting. Cameras on job sites, IP logs, security upgrades, 2-factor authentication, new passcodes, armor instead of apologies. A week later, the city dismissed the complaint. Slowly, momentum returned. Then I saw Brandon's black Lexus idling across the street one morning, watching, and I knew this wasn't over. The Christmas gathering was supposed to be small. Just immediate family, my mother said on the phone, her voice carefully light. No drama. We need this, Hannah. I agreed under one condition: I wouldn't stay long. Daniel offered to come with me. I told him no. This was old territory. Familiar landmines. I didn't want him standing in the blast radius. I arrived with a tin of cookies and a polite smile. Brandon opened the door and stared at me like I'd shown up uninvited, even though Mom had begged me to come. Inside, the house felt tight, like the walls were listening. Dad sat by the fireplace with a glass of scotch. Mom hovered over appetizers, overcompensating. Conversation stumbled forward in careful, shallow steps. Brandon talked. A lot. Consulting gigs, opportunities, names meant to impress. I nodded, gave nothing back. Then his fiancée spoke. Her name was Sierra. She was new to the family. Polite, earnest, too honest for this room. I heard you own several buildings, Hannah, she said brightly. That's incredible. Brandon told me you're really successful with your company. I love people who build things from the ground up. Silence fell like a dropped plate. Brandon's face went tight. His glare at Sierra was sharp enough to draw blood. I just mean, she added, quickly sensing it. It's nice when both siblings are doing well. Mom changed the subject. Dad cleared his throat. Brandon excused himself. I put my coat on 10 minutes later. He followed me onto the porch. You think you're clever, he said quietly, trying to embarrass me. I didn't say anything, I replied. You think people are impressed by your little houses and lawn crews? I met his eyes. I think I surpassed you years ago, I said calmly. You were just too busy looking in the mirror to notice. His face flushed. I walked away. That was the night I knew he'd escalate again. And he did. February dragged its feet like it always does. Gray mornings, frozen ground, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. I should have been relieved when the city dismissed the complaint. Officially, everything was clean. On paper, I'd won. In reality, the fallout lingered. Contractors hesitated. Tenants asked for extensions. One pulled out entirely citing uncertainty. None of them said my name like it was a risk, but I heard it anyway in the pauses and the careful wording of emails that used to be enthusiastic and now felt clinical. I kept moving. I always did. Early mornings at the Maple Avenue site clipboard under my arm boots, crunching gravel. I tightened timelines, reworked budgets, called people back twice when they didn't respond the first time. I refused to let momentum die just because someone wanted me exhausted enough to quit. But exhaustion has a way of sneaking up on you. One night, Daniel found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, not scrolling, not typing, just holding it like it might ring with bad news if I set it down. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said gently. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But I'd spent my whole life learning that when things went wrong, I was expected to handle it quietly, competently, without making anyone uncomfortable. So I nodded, changed the subject, went to bed, and lay awake until 2 in the morning, listening to my own breathing. The next day, Grandpa showed up again. Same rusted Ford, same unbothered confidence as he walked onto my job site like it belonged to him. He unfolded a chair near the fence and sat down watching my crew work like he was evaluating a chessboard. We didn't talk for 10 minutes. Then he said, "You done being polite yet?" I laughed under my breath. I don't know how to be anything else. "That's the problem," he said. "Polite girls get walked on. Competent girls get used. The only ones who don't are the ones who finally decide they're not responsible for other people's comfort." That landed harder than I expected. I told him about the camera system I'd installed, the logs I was keeping, the authentication upgrades, how I was building armor instead of excuses. He nodded satisfied. "Good, because what your brother's doing, it's not about business, it's about control. And control only works when you're still trying to keep the peace." That night after Grandpa left, I sat at my desk and pulled up every record I'd been keeping. Dates, times, screenshots, emails, IP addresses, patterns that told a very clear story if you bothered to look. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself how to make it stop quietly. I started asking how to make it stop permanently. A week later, the bakery signed the lease. The chiropractor followed. Momentum crept back in, not loudly, not triumphantly, but steadily. I was loading mulch one morning when I noticed a black Lexus idling across the street. Tinted windows, engine humming. "Brandon." I didn't wave, didn't stare, I just kept working. Because something in me had shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. And I didn't yet know how, but I knew exactly where this was going to end. The invitation arrived on a Wednesday. Not slipped under this door. Not tossed in the mailbox like junk mail. It came in a thick cream-colored envelope, wax-sealed. My name printed in gold cursive like it was trying to flatter me into forgetting everything that had come before it. Ms. Hannah Dawson. Formal. Careful. Deliberate. The return address was Brandon's downtown condo, the one Dad had co-signed for, the one Brandon liked to describe as floor-to-ceiling city views, even though the windows faced a concrete parking structure. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter and let it sit there for a day and a half like a test. Not because I was afraid of what was inside, but because I wanted to see how my body reacted to it. Fear. Anger. Dread. None of those came. What I felt was clarity. When I finally broke the seal, it was early morning. Black coffee, quiet kitchen. The kind of stillness where you can hear your own thoughts too clearly. Inside was an invitation wrapped in navy ribbon, heavy paper, elegant script. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Brandon Dawson and Sierra Langston. Saturday, September 10th. The Langston Estate, Riverbend Hills." It was lavish. Old money lavish. Sierra came from a family that didn't talk about wealth because it had never known anything else. But the real message wasn't in the print. It was handwritten at the bottom in Brandon's unmistakable cursive. "Hoping this event can help us all move forward. Dress code is formal. Please leave work boots at home. This time, wouldn't want you tracking mud into the rose garden." I stared at it for a long moment. Not angry, not shocked. Just done. This wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't an olive branch. It was bait. A final attempt to put me back in my place in front of people who believed his version of reality. The polished prodigy marrying into prestige and the embarrassing sister who worked with her hands. Up until that moment, I'd played fair. I hadn't told the family about the fake complaints. I hadn't mentioned the review bombing. I hadn't said his name out loud in accusation. I'd just worked harder. That stopped being enough the second he decided to humiliate me publicly. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront him at the altar. I wasn't going to turn this into a spectacle. I was going to tell the truth. Cleanly, precisely, with receipts. And I was going to do it on his stage. The first call I made was to Alex. Alex used to work for one of Brandon's failed startups. Back-end developer. Quiet. Brilliant. He'd once said something at a mutual friend's barbecue that stuck with me. "Brandon never pays his debts," he'd said casually. "He just buries them under new logos." Alex picked up on the second ring. "Hey," he said. "Hannah Dawson, landscaping queen. What's up?" "You still have the files?" I asked. There was a pause, then a soft laugh. You finally ready to stop pretending he's harmless. That afternoon, a compressed file hit my inbox. Password protected, labeled plainly. Archive. Emails. Slack messages. Financial manipulations. Inflated metrics. Mockery of investors. Jokes about Sierra's family behind their backs. It was damning. But I didn't want it to come from me. That would look emotional, vindictive, personal. I needed someone who knew how to dismantle reputations without ever raising their voice. So I made the second call to Emily. Emily was my ex-girlfriend, no, my ex-partner professionally speaking, because that's where our relationship had lived by the end. We'd ended things amicably over timing and ambition, not betrayal. She worked in public relations, crisis management, corporate cleanups, strategic truth delivery. She answered cautiously. Hannah, I need a favor, I said, and I won't ask unless it matters. There was a beat. Talk. I laid out the facts, the evidence, the wedding, the lies, the people about to be bound to a man who wasn't who he claimed to be. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, okay, here's how we do this. We spent 3 hours building a dossier. Only what could be verified. No commentary, no emotion, just facts, timestamps, screenshots, financial records. We created a dummy email account, timed the send. Emily had a contact connected to the Langston wedding planning team. She confirmed the rehearsal dinner, Friday 6:00 p.m. Key guests, family, Sierra's parents, her aunt who happened to be a state judge. We scheduled the email for 5:50 p.m. Subject line, before you toast the groom. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was preparation. I gathered everything Brandon had done to me personally, filed incident reports, logged IP addresses, built a clean timeline, not for revenge, for protection. Then I did one last thing I should have done months earlier. I sat down with my parents. Mom poured iced tea. Dad grilled chicken. 10 minutes of silence before I said it. I know what Brandon's been doing. Dad froze. I handed them the folder. And this time I didn't apologize for speaking. I didn't stay long after handing my parents the folder. I didn't need to. The proof spoke louder than anything I could have said. Screenshots, IP logs, timelines so clean they almost felt sterile. The kind of evidence that doesn't ask for belief, it demands acknowledgement. Mom skimmed the pages at first, then slower. Her hands started to shake. Dad didn't read right away. He just stared at the grill like he was trying to burn the truth away with heat alone. Why would he do this, Mom whispered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't sigh. Because I stopped being the failure I said. And he couldn't stand it. Dad finally looked at me then. Really looked. Not like a problem to be solved, not like an embarrassment to manage, but like a person he hadn't bothered to understand. He's your brother, he said weakly. No, I replied. He's a bully in a tailored suit. Neither of them defended Brandon. That was new. I left the folder with them and drove home, feeling lighter than I had in months, not relieved, not victorious, just unburdened. Whatever happened next, I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. The next 48 hours were quiet. Too quiet. Daniel noticed immediately. You're calm, he said one night as we sat on the couch, my feet tucked under his leg. That's usually your danger sign. I smiled faintly. I've already decided how this ends. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. I just told him I wasn't going to be reactive anymore, that I was done shrinking. He squeezed my hand. Whatever you do, he said, do it clean. That was always the plan. The email went out Friday at 5:50 p.m. exactly. Emily, my ex-boyfriend, and the only person I trusted to keep emotion out of it, had insisted on precision. No accusations in the body, no dramatic language, just attachments clearly labeled. A short message. These materials may be relevant to the decisions you are about to celebrate. That was it. I didn't attend the rehearsal dinner. I didn't want to be anywhere near the initial blast. I waited. It took 19 minutes for my phone to ring. Grandpa. Girl, he said, not panicked, but sharp with urgency. You better get down here. The dam just broke. I drove faster than I probably should have. The Langston estate looked like something out of a magazine. Iron gates, manicured hedges, lights glowing warm against the early evening sky. But the shouting inside cut through the elegance like a crack in glass. No one stopped me at the entrance. The staff was too distracted. I slipped through a side hallway lined with family portraits and stepped into chaos. Guests were standing, arguing, whispering. A pianist sat frozen at the keys. Plates of half-eaten food littered the tables. And at the center of it all was Brandon, red-faced, sweating, holding a stack of printed emails like they were burning his hands. Sierra stood a step away from him, pale and shaking, clutching the same pages. You mocked my father, she said, voice trembling but loud. You lied to us, to everyone. They're out of context, Brandon snapped. This is sabotage. It's Hannah. She's trying to ruin me. That's when I stepped forward. I didn't ruin anything I said evenly. I just stopped protecting your lies. The room went silent. Sierra's father looked at Brandon with a calm that scared me more than anger ever could. Is it true, he asked. All of it. Brandon hesitated. Too long. Sierra stepped back like she'd touched something poisonous. I defended you, she said softly, over and over. Security moved in, but one of Sierra's cousins waved them off. I was invited. Everyone knew it now. Brandon shoved me, not hard enough to hurt, just desperate enough to reveal himself. You think you won, he hissed. I leaned in just enough for him to hear me. No, I said, I think you finally lost control. I walked out on my own. Behind me, the wedding collapsed. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. The fallout didn't crawl. It rushed. By morning, the wedding was officially canceled. Not postponed, not reimagined, canceled. The venue stayed booked, though Sierra's family used it for a private brunch instead. That detail made its way into the local society pages in a way that said everything without spelling it out. Sierra posted once, a single line beneath a neutral photo. Some truths arrive late, but they still arrive. Brandon tried to spin it. Of course he did. Claimed sabotage, claimed forged documents, claimed jealousy. But facts don't bend just because someone's voice gets louder. Emily Cool, precise, relentlessly professional, had already sent verified copies to the Langston legal team, IP trails, metadata, timelines that closed every exit. It wasn't dramatic, it was airtight. Within a week, Sierra's father pulled their family's investment. That triggered a breach clause in Brandon's remaining funding. Money he didn't have suddenly became money he owed. Calls went unanswered. Doors that once opened on name alone stayed shut. Dad didn't intervene. That was the quietest consequence of all. 2 weeks later, my father called me. He didn't apologize outright. He'd never been built that way, but he said something close enough. I was wrong about you for a long time, he said, and that was enough. Mom called after. She cried, said she felt like she didn't know her own daughter anymore. I didn't ask which daughter she meant. A few days later, she mailed me a packet of photos I'd never seen before me, as a kid front and center, not blurred behind Brandon's trophies. I put them in a drawer. I wasn't ready yet. Someday, maybe. Grandpa showed up in my Maple Avenue site 2 weeks later with a folding chair and a bag of lemon drops. He sat there watching my crew work quiet as ever. Then he nodded once and said, clean, surgical. You get that from your grandmother. I laughed. Spring came. The plaza filled. 2 new commercial leases signed. I hired 5 more workers. Bought another truck. My accountant told me I'd crossed my first $1 million in revenue. No one handed it to me. No one rescued me. I built it. As for Brandon, last I heard, he'd moved out of state consulting for a friend's app company. Smaller rooms. Smaller titles. Same big talk. He sent me one message. Just one line. You think you won? I didn't reply. Because I didn't need to think anything. I wasn't the disappointment. I was the blueprint. And the next time someone calls me the other Dawson, I'll just smile and let them find out why that matters.